only thing more confusing than Sony's product names is Sony's product strategy.
But we've done the work and picked a clear winner. Stay tuned till the end.
Goedendag, we're DHRME, dudes hearing rhythms with molded ear tips.
Okay, here's a chart of the prices of the 5 most important Sony wireless earbuds you can buy in US dollars. Sony WF-1000XM4, LinkBuds S, LinkBuds, WF-1000XM3, and WF-C500. The headlining feature here is noise cancellation. Obviously, you are not getting it on the OG LinkBuds. You know, the one with the big hole in them. And the cheapest of the lot, this WF-C500, doesn't have noise cancelling either. So how do the 3 that do have noise cancelling, the XM3, XM4, and LinkBuds S, perform? Well, we're glad you asked. Here's how the noise cancellation looks.
The XM3 is still decent when it comes to absolute noise cancelling, but it's starting to show its age. The XM4 is considerably far ahead, and you hear this mainly in the low end of the test. We've consistently put the XM4 in the top tier when it comes to active noise cancelling, so we were dumbstruck to see that Sony's newest offering, the LinkBuds S, is close. In fact, in a real blind test, we might not even be able to tell them apart. It's only at the higher frequencies that you see that the XM4 does slightly better. But trust me, I took 2 overnight trains and buses on a recent trip, and every time I put the LinkBuds S in, they were more than sufficient. As far as low-end ANC, they are on par with the XM4. This is also clearly visible in the graph that we generated. When it comes to wind noise, the XM4 and XM3 are the only ones that have an app setting to enable wind noise reduction. For the LinkBuds S, so in windy situations, there is no wind noise reduction mode, but the ANC seems to work pretty well for me, which is actually better than having a separate wind noise reduction mode. Sony also offers a ton of customization options for noise cancelling. LinkBuds S and XM4 have the most options, but more on that later. So there's ANC and there's transparency. Look, if you want to have that feeling of nothing in your ears, just get the Sony LinkBuds. You will be compromising on a few things, but there's nothing that beats a literal hole in your ears or in the buds for transparency. You know, we've had many questions as to why the LinkBuds S are called the LinkBuds. And you know, I think we found one link, and that link is transparency. The LinkBuds S's transparency is pretty much among the best that we've tested. Among noise cancelling buds, that is. It reminds us very much of the AirPods Pro in terms of clarity, and especially the clarity in the higher frequencies. So the LinkBuds S's transparency, in our view, outperforms the Sony WF-1000XM4. The XM4 has a fairly decent transparency mode, but for us it was always just a little worse than it needed to be, you know, to get that feeling that you don't need to take your buds out of your ears. Usable in a pinch, but not for longer conversations. And if you look at how far we've come from the Sony WF-1000XM3, it's obvious that Sony has been working on its relative weakness.
Speaking of holes, comfort is a big deal with in-ear buds. If you ask us, this is why we prefer bone conduction or speakers or wireless headphones for listening for longer periods of time. Ear tips can get sweaty and sticky, and it's just not what nature intended for my beautiful ears. Speaking of sweaty and sticky, all of these buds come with the same IP rating, IPX4, except the XM3, which has no rating at all. For the rest, we wouldn't advise getting them anywhere near dusty areas, but will do perfectly fine against sweat and rain. Also, if you want to get the best out of your earbuds, you need maximum penetration, and that's not very pleasurable when it comes to true wireless earbuds. But the thing about penetration is that not all tips are created equal. Size and materials matter. So as far as size is concerned, Sony has pretty much standard sizes across the board. The Sony WF-1000XM3 was the only set of buds that gave you 2 different types of tips and a whole host of sizes. We're not even sure if that's the case with the newest units anymore. But more than anything, on our channel, we've gotten comments on how uncomfortable Sony's hybrid foam tips on the XM4 were. They're great for ANC and sealing the ears for audio, but poor for comfort, which is why literally any of the other buds on this list is fine because they all use silicone tips. You can use aftermarket tips, but beware, they can cause a change in the sound and ANC of these products, so keep that in mind. None of this applies to the OG LinkBuds since yeah, they come with silicone wingtips to adjust the fit with your concha. So in terms of comfort, they're the best.
Also keep in mind that wireless earbuds, they're all about convenience, and convenience is all about size. If you throw the buds in a bag, then it doesn't matter, but for us earbud pocketeers, size is everything. So Sony's newest offering, the LinkBuds S, is the best you can get for pocketability. The LinkBuds with the holes here is worse because even though it is small, it has some girth to it. To be honest, the XM4 is also very good, and even though the XM3 was large enough to cause damage to someone as a projectile, is still rather slim and could be pocketed. The WF-C500 though, they look kind of funky with the transparent cover, but the rather cylindrical design isn't going to win you too many friends when it's lodged in your front pocket. When it comes to the buds itself, we think that the XM4 is the snazziest looking of the bunch, and the LinkBuds S are understated and subtle. But the design isn't only about how things look, it's also how we interact with the devices. And only the C500 here has buttons, literal, solid, physical, globular buttons that sit at the end of the earbuds. All of the others use touch controls. Now you'd think that snazzy touch controls would be better than buttons, but we don't agree. Especially if you're in colder weather, the gloves don't like touch surfaces. We also like how Sony has done these buttons. They're easy to hit with very low travel, which means they don't really hurt your ears as you press down. Unfortunately, in daily use, they were a little bit unreliable with some presses not registering. Now, the rest of the buds have capacitive touch, which means they will be gentle on your ears, but they also have varying degrees of customization, which we'll touch upon in a bit.
And speaking of calling, which of these buds have the best call quality? We'll have samples for you at the end of this video. But here's the bottom line. The Sony LinkBuds S has the best sounding microphones for phone calls. The XM4 is okay, the XM3 is less okay, and probably the worst here. Surprisingly, the LinkBuds with the holes and the cheapest C500 do fine. It's been quite a few generations, but our sense is that Sony is finally figuring out calls, and that makes it a legit competitor in this space. And it's not just the tests. We posted a bunch of shorts on the channel that were real-life testing of the microphones in windy, noisy, and beautiful conditions. Yes, you're gonna have to check those videos out yourself. And yes, we'll also link them down below. And speaking of LinkBuds, you can buy any of these products using our links. Buds doesn't cost you anything extra, but helps us crank out more free content. Use the links. Buds S.
Let's talk about the app. Luckily, it's the same app for all the buds, the Headphones Connect app, but the features will change depending on the model you have. The most basic of the lot isn't particularly surprising. It's the C500, since it only has the basics like EQ, which, to be honest, is already more than some other companies offer. Apart from that, the OG LinkBuds is the strange duck of the flock. Since it's an open style set of buds, it obviously doesn't have ANC. But on top of what the C500 gives you, you do get the ability to customize the tap control, smart pause, and automatically turn it off if it's not being used, as well as speak to chat. Speak to chat detects if you're trying to speak and will pause audio and kick in ambient mode. And it works well as long as you don't sing along to your music or burp loudly while eating. And the LinkBuds also comes with some specific features like wide area tap, meaning you don't need to tap the buds themselves, but you can tap between your ears and cheek, and that will work too. Might sound like LinkBuds can do some next level tapping, but unfortunately they also have the most limited tap customization. You only have the ability to use a double or triple tap, whereas the others, depending on the functionality, can use a single or long tap as well. And being open style buds, you may want to increase volume when you're in a noisy space. Luckily, Sony can do that for you automatically using adaptive volume control. You can also disable this in the app if you want. Unfortunately, we're not fully satisfied with the controls on these Sony buds. The fact that you can only choose 2 out of ANC, volume, and media controls is a real bummer. We don't like to take our phones out of our pockets, and hopefully Sony can fix the next generation of buds to have a nice volume ring or something. When we come to the noise cancelling buds, the LinkBuds S, XM3 and XM4 get you all the previously mentioned features and the ANC related bells and whistles like adaptive and ambient sound control. But we've talked about ANC already. The downside with the XM3 is that it doesn't feature speak to chat, and the auto pause weirdly works only when both your buds are in your ears and you take one out. If you're using just one bud and take that one out, the auto pause doesn't work. And the LinkBuds S doesn't have a specific wind noise reduction option in the app like we mentioned earlier. The LinkBuds S is quite feature packed in its app. In our opinion, it matches the more expensive XM4. All in all, what's nice is that Sony has not put in any artificial limitations on the LinkBuds S earbuds, and that feels like an honest approach from this old school audio company. We don't mind them taking away features hardware wise and then charging a lower price, but to take off features artificially via software is kind of a low blow.
Let's talk juice, or in other words, battery life. If you're someone who's heavily invested in wireless charging, then we're afraid you've got one choice only, the XM4. All of them thankfully charge with USB Type-C and feature some sort of fast charging ranging from 5 to 10 minutes charge, resulting in 60 to 90 minutes of playback. But battery life with ANC on, if available, goes to the XM4 at 8 hours on the buds and 2 additional charges from the case. But if you want more charge cycles from the case, then go ahead and judge the buds by its case. That fat XM3 case actually translates into a respectable 6 hours on the buds and 3 additional charges from the case. The LinkBuds S is similar with 6 hours on the buds and around 2 from the case. Not bad. ANC is obviously a battery drainer, and that's why you get a whopping 10 hours on the C500. But disappointingly, you only get a single extra charge from the case. The OG LinkBuds doesn't have ANC, but also no whopping battery life. I guess you cut corners or circles when you have tiny buds with a gaping hole in them. Just 5.5 on those with around 2 extra charges from the case. And what if you're in a polygamous relationship with your Bluetooth devices? Well, we've got good and bad news for you. You want the good news first? Okay, the bad news is that none of these support simultaneous multi-point connections. But the good news is that you can pull the connection from a previously paired device without having to disconnect the connected device. This worked flawlessly on all of the buds except for the XM3 and the C500. It was a bit quirky and not as reliable as the other buds, but still impressive.
Now we're down to the meat and potatoes of earbuds, sound quality. So, does size matter? Well, yes, in this case it does. The biggest drivers on any of these earbuds is the XM4 at 6mm, and it shows that bass is big and rich. And if you don't like the tuning out of the box, you can tweak it to an extent. The treble does have its limitations though and can break down if you try to take it too far. What is very interesting is that all the other in-ear buds here have a very similar sound profile. I felt that the LinkBuds S is tuned very closely to the XM3 with a slightly smaller driver than the XM4 at 5mm. It does a little less bass and tends to fall apart a little sooner on the treble side post EQing. But here's the thing, this is only if you're like A/B testing them one after the other. For most casual purposes, the LinkBuds S is good. And when I was out and about on vacation recently, I found them to be more than adequate. In fact, very good. If you're not a very picky audio person, but you also know what bad earbuds sound like, this will do just fine for you. It's also far and away the loudest here, just a hair louder than the XM4. The XM3 and the C500 are way quieter than the other two in-ear buds. Still loud enough for us, but you will find them too quiet if you're someone who wants to subject your eardrums to higher sound pressure levels. The LinkBuds with the hole is okay for what it is, but don't expect it to match up with any of the in-ears. The best bang for your buck is the XM3. Sure, it doesn't have LDAC, but we've said it before and we'll say it again. Good drivers and tuning are way more important than the resolution gain from using high quality codecs. The price drop also shows with the CF500. It does fairly well at bass, and you know what? It's not as bad as the lower price would suggest. You get some cheap earbuds which are all over the place with timbre, and the CF500 is much better than those. But on this list, it is probably the worst performing.
In sharp contrast to their older products, Sony's newer buds, starting with the XM4, have gone all in on being environmentally conscious. The LinkBuds S, for example, uses recycled plastic materials from automobile parts and no plastic packaging. Even the cheapest WFC 500 uses no plastic in its packaging, which is a sign that Sony is seriously thinking of the impact on the planet. You could say that this is just lip service and batteries and unscrupulous supply chains are a bigger problem, but Sony also addresses those points on their sustainability website. And you know what? We'll take that because there are companies who don't even do this much. So if you want to be conscious of your choices as a consumer, well, buy less to begin with. But Sony's products are a fairly decent path to walk down.
So the money question, which one should you buy? Out of all these products, the LinkBuds is unique. It's an inspired take on an open-ear design, and Sony's product team should be proud of themselves. And if you're looking for an alternative to bone conduction headphones or open-ear headphones in general, this is a pretty good idea and probably sound better than some of those options. The XM3 still offers decent value, but it is starting to show its age, especially when you look at noise cancelling, and they are horrendous at calls. XM4 is an excellent product for everything barring the comfort and the calls. And that brings us to our winner. Drumroll! We think that the LinkBuds S is Sony's best product in recent times. Not only has Sony listened to its customers by making these buds more comfortable, but the most important feature of these buds is their price. They're simply more competitive, with pressure coming from the lower end market from kick-ass companies like Edifier, Soundcore, and one more. But also from bigger brands like Samsung, Sony could no longer sit on its noise-cancelling laurels to carry it through the day. We think that the LinkBuds S pays heed to the shots fired in the true wireless earbud market, and Sony is back in the game. You've been clicking on links, buds, and we've been DHRME. Namaste. Sony WF-C500. Wow, quiet conditions, a lot of occlusion. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Sony WF-1000 XM3, quiet conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Sony LinkBuds S, normal conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Sony LinkBuds, normal, quiet conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Sony WF-1000 XM4, quiet conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Sony WF-C500, noisy conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Sony WF-1000 XM3, noisy conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Sony LinkBuds, noisy conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Sony LinkBuds S, noisy conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Sony WF-1000 XM4, noisy conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Sony WF-C500, windy conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Sony WF-1000 XM3 windy conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle. Ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. One, two, three. Pop, pop, popsicle. Ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. One. Sony LinkBuds, windy conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle. Ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. One, two, three. Pop, pop, popsicle. Ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. Sony LinkBuds S, windy conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle. Ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. One, two, three. Pop, pop, popsicle. Ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing.